and welcome back to the Girl Gone London channel. In today's video, we're talking about some American words that British people don't tend to use or understand in some cases. Now, this whole video was brought about because somebody commented on a word I used in a previous video that they said they had to look up, and that is our first word. The word is finagle. Now, finagle basically means to figure something out or get something done in kind of like an underhanded or devious way is the actual definition. However, it doesn't have to mean devious in a completely malicious sort of way. It just sort of means thinking outside the box to get something done. So maybe something doesn't actually fit into place necessarily, but you finagled it in. And that's a word I don't typically hear in the UK. Number two is cattywampus. Cattywampus is regularly understood and used within the US, and I've never heard anyone say it in the UK. It's basically something that is slightly off. It's askew. You could look cattywampus if maybe your outfit wasn't matching, or your clothes weren't fitting quite right, or something else, usually something physical, could be cattywampus, and again, just sort of not organized and kind of messed up looking. The next word, and people will know what this means, but is typically not used in the UK, is sidewalk. Typically in the UK, I hear people say pavement, whereas pavement in the US is typically only meaning the actual black pavement on a road top, whereas the bit that you walk alongside the road is called the sidewalk. Now, the next word on my list is blinkers. So if you haven't heard this word before, comment below and let me know. Pause the video, let me know what you think the word blinkers is referring to. If you are in the know and are American yourself or have heard this before, Americans say blinkers to mean the indicators on their car. So your turn signal, your indicator in the UK, we call it putting on your blinkers, because they blink, I guess. It makes sense to me. This is one of those funny situations where indicators does make sense in the UK because you're indicating which way you're going to turn, and blinkers also make sense to me in the US because it is literally blinking to tell somebody that you're turning. Next on my list is the word conniption, i.e. don't have a conniption. Conniption is a kind of a meltdown or some sort of like freak out. To have a conniption, it's typically viewed as something that's short-lived. So it's not a long ongoing meltdown or like a mental breakdown. It's just a short and sweet panic or overwhelm or moment of anger or something like that. So a short meltdown is a conniption. The next one on my list, trash can. British people don't say the word trash, and so trash can isn't used in the UK, but this is what we call our bins. So we would say throw it in the trash can, or is there a trash can around? And here in the UK, people would know what you're talking about, but would never say the word trash can. However, if you switch it and you go to the US and you say the word bins, actually, many Americans aren't going to know exactly what you're referring to, and the reason is because when we think of a bin, we think of something that you would use to maybe organize something, some sort of container, which is what a bin is, but we wouldn't necessarily think it's for the rubbish or garbage. So this is one of those things that actually kind of depends which side of the pond you're crossing in order to determine if someone's going to understand you. The next American word on my list is broiler. And a broiler is essentially what Brits refer to as the grill within an oven. So if you say grill in the US, you're not referring to something within an oven, you're referring to this, which you would use to barbecue. Next up is faucet. I say this a lot still. I think I do kind of interchangeably use it with the word taps, but these are taps in the UK and faucets in the USA. Another interesting one is the American word janitor. So the janitor is a caretaker or cleaner or maintenance person, kind of all of those in one. And we really think of it when it comes to schools. So a lot of times a school will have the janitor. And I find that the word janitor is really not used within the UK. Again, people tend to prefer the words like caretaker or maintenance person or just cleaner to describe what that person is doing. And this leads into another difference because kind of the storage room for materials or supplies, often in like a school, could be called like the janitor's closet. So that's not really used in the UK in order to refer to that type of room, but that's what a janitor's closet is. It's where you keep the cleaning supplies and just the storage of like extra stuff. Now, another interesting one, and this is also where I want your feedback. What do you call this thing? In America, we typically call it a couch, Whereas I feel like in the UK, I hear the word sofa a lot more. I'm not sure if I've ever heard a British person say couch, though I'm sure it has happened. And this leads me to believe that couch is kind of the American term, and sofa, or fancy people might say settee, I've never said that in my life until this video, but that is what typically most Brits seem to call it. I always say, oh, we're lounging on the couch, or I want to sit on the couch, and I just feel like people here don't say that. Next is trunk. So Brits also use the word trunk, but they don't use it to mean the same thing as Americans. When Americans say trunk, we could mean trunk of an elephant, that is a trunk, but we typically are going to mean this, which is called the boot of a car in the UK. I find that, first of all, referring to the boot as the trunk is not done in the UK. However, the word trunk does also exist. We also call the trunk of an elephant a trunk in the UK, but I would think most British people would think of something like this if you said trunk. So kind of like a large luggage storage thing that you might, I don't know, take off to Hogwarts or boarding school or something. And the next American word on my list that Brits definitely don't use, though do understand, is the word elevator. That is such an American term not used in the UK. A British person will almost always say the word lift. And lift does exist as a word in America, but it just means to lift something up. We do not refer to this contraption as a lift in the US. Now, some other interesting ones are the word jonesing. So in America, people often say, oh, I'm jonesing for some coffee, or I'm jonesing for a piece of cake or something like that. And jonesing, it just means to really, really crave and to really, really want something. And actually the history of the word jonesing does relate to addiction, when an addict would be jonesing for the thing they're addicted to. But now it's used in more everyday speech in a much less intense way, that you could be just, again, jonesing to get out of the house even, jonesing to go to the movies. You can kind of be jonesing for really anything you're really wanting to do. Our next American word is pacifier. And a pacifier has nothing to do with pacifying someone. Actually, it does have to do with pacifying somebody. Actually, I just realized maybe where this word came from. I was like, oh, it doesn't have anything to do with pacifying, because I'm thinking of like war negotiations or something like that. But no, it's a pacifier because it is pacifying the child that is crying. Guys, real time, just thought about this. In the UK, they don't use the word pacifier, they use the word dummy. And the second to last one on my list is kind of a phrase. So it's the 411. And somebody might say, give me the 411. And that just means give me the scoop, give me the up-to-date information. The 411 is just referring to what is current, what is happening, the gossip, the news, the 411. And the last on my list is the word folks. Now, folks, which is a strange word, is used in the UK as well, but I feel like Americans use it a bit more, and especially when it comes to greeting people. So we might say like, hey folks, what's up, if you approach a group of people or something like that. Now that brings me to the end of this list, but I would love for you to comment below and let me know of any American words that have ever caught you off guard or you didn't know the meaning to, because I find it so fascinating how we just use words on both sides of the pond that we just think are so common and so commonly used and understood, and it turns out that they don't always translate. As always, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.